Later on, Carr remembered things. Hamilton's dark glasses, for instance, his habit of wearing gloves even in summer, and the way he reeked of cologne. And he lived out by Sunny Lawn. On the other hand, Hamilton worked in a broker's office. He took the 7:15 to the city and came back on the 5:15. He read the Sun on the way in and the Gazette on the way back, just as everyone else did. In fact, except that he was unmarried and didn't play golf, he corresponded to the commuter's norm. It was the aftermath of the wreck that made Carr think. Whether the engineer misread the signals or the signals were wrong, nobody knew, because he was killed. Carr, who had been reading a most interesting editorial on the new Congress, looked up with his mouth open when the first shock came. There was a long moment when the car seemed to hesitate about whether to leave the rails before it rolled over twice and came to rest on its side. As the lights went off and flames began to shoot up, Hamilton was admirably self-possessed. He took his shoes off, got up on the arm of the seat, and with the heel of his foot broke the glass out. Then he hauled himself through the opening, reached down and helped Carr out too. There were people still in the train, and he lost Hamilton while helping as many as he could. Then he had to stand there and listen to the screams. 10 bodies were taken to the mortuary. 64 persons were hospitalized. Of these, 3 subsequently died. News had been scarce, and a train wreck is always interesting, and when you add a garrulous mortuary attendant to an imaginative reporter, you may get something sensational. 3 days after the wreck, there was a feature article in the Gazette, and it was captioned, "Is there a vampire on the 5:15?" Carr read it and snorted indignantly. He thought the article was in the worst of taste, and said so to Keith, who shared his seat. To his annoyance, Keith read the article slowly and shook his head. "You can't always tell," he said. Carr felt outraged. "You mean you believe all that crazy stuff about bodies being drained of their blood in a way for which no wound could account?" he said. "Fred, I'm surprised." "Well, you know how the papers are, but I think it's possible. Suppose there's somebody on this train who's fond of blood. Psychiatrists know about people like that, don't they? And suppose that person took advantage of the wreck to indulge his taste. As the writer points out, there's no reason why a vampire should spend all its time in a graveyard and only come out at night." Afterwards, Carr had nightmares about the wreck, in which the whole weight of the burning train lay upon him while he, helpless, watched something more horrid than the flames drawing near. As he walked out past Sunny Lawn one evening in May, considering the investment program he was going to discuss with Hamilton, there was a nagging little worry about Mary Jane, his sister's 7-year-old daughter, who had been hospitalized with what the doctors called cryptogenic anemia. Arriving early, he stood for a moment in front of Hamilton's place, admiring the emerald lawn and sniffing the rich odor of syringas, lilacs, and Verbunum carlesii. He must press Hamilton once more to tell him what fertilizer he used. There was no answer to the bell, and after a moment's hesitation Carr tried the door, found it unlocked, and went in. There was nobody in the house. Carr went through the rooms calling, "Hamilton," in careful tones. The cellar occurred to him as a last resort. Carr looked around the kitchen. Saw that the door in the side wall, which obviously led to the cellar, was ajar, and went over to it. From the darkness beneath came a faint but unmistakable drip, drip, drip. "Hamilton!" Carr called. There was a scurry of noise in the darkness, a pause, and then Hamilton, preceded by a wave of cologne, came up the stairs. He shook hands with Carr with apparent cordiality and installed him in the living room in the most comfortable chair. They went over the investment program together, and in the middle of the discussion Hamilton remarked casually that he'd been trying to stop a persistent leak, probably from an underground spring in the corner of his cellar, and Carr nodded agreeably. Does a man stop leaks in his cellar in the dark? Carr thought. That night he had the dream again, but this time Mary Jane lay beside him in the wreckage of the burning train. Next day he concluded he must be run down, and had his secretary call Dr. Gleeder to arrange for a check-up next week. Ellen met him at the door that night in tears, and said that his sister had called and that Mary Jane was much worse. Much worse. They'd had a consultation with 3 specialists, and she was to have an immediate transfusion. Time went on. Carr had the interview with Gleeder. Dr. Gleeder thumped him and tapped him and listened to him and gave him a series of laboratory tests. In the end he said that while Carr was certainly nervous, it was nothing that could not be accounted for by the combination of delayed nervous reaction to a serious accident and worry over his niece. He advised an early vacation. Mary Jane's death shook him to the core. After the funeral he had nightmares about the burning train more frequently, and now Mary Jane, her little face distorted with horror, pleaded with him wordlessly to save her from the thing. The vacation toward the end of June did him no good. He came back tanned but no less nervous than before. The dream had followed him, and the apprehension and the guilt. Hamilton went away on his vacation, and for a time Carr improved and regained some of his lost weight. Ellen remarked sagely that sometimes a vacation didn't really do you any good until after you got home and were, so to speak, rested up from it. 3 weeks later she was writing to her mother that William was interested in some woman, and did he expect her to believe those fairy tales about working late at the office when he got home at 2:30 in the morning with grass stains on his knees and mud on his shoes? Actually, he was spending his evenings in a very damp swale in an untenanted portion of Sunny Lawn, watching Hamilton's house. On the 3rd night of his vigil, the clock in the Sunny Lawn Carillon Tower was striking the half-hour before 12. Hamilton came softly down the steps. He crossed the street into Sunny Lawn. Sunny Lawn is a modern cemetery, unwalled, past Carr's hiding place, and turned to the right. Carr did not dare get very close. This may have been why he lost Hamilton's trail after the other got near the chapel. He decided to wait. A little more than an hour later Hamilton returned. As he came abreast of Carr he put up one hand and with its back delicately patted his lips. 3 nights later Hamilton visited Sunny Lawn once more. He was gone rather longer than on the previous occasion, but as Carr caught sight of him, Hamilton raised his hand and made once again the gesture of the well-fed. Carr stayed home the next night and the next, lying in a miserable, rigid trance. He did not go to Sunny Lawn on the third night either, and when, a little after 2, there was a whirring outside his bedroom window, it seemed he had been expecting it. Next morning, the girl at the Gazette reception desk took a preliminary look at Carr and hesitated. He looked normal enough, but the expression of his eyes... "Somebody to see you, Tom," she said into the phone, cupping her hand around the mouthpiece. "It's about that piece you wrote last winter, about the vampire." Thompson listened to Carr's painful verbal stumbling for several moments, and then suggested that they go out and have a spiced rum. Over the second drink, Carr managed to get to the point. "Well, of course, Mr. Carr, you've got to remember that sometimes newspapers print things that, one has to take with a grain of salt. 2 more of the same, please. I don't quite get the point about the dripping noise you heard in his cellar, though. What would it be?" Carr shook his head. "I don't know. I can't imagine." "But whatever it is, you feel it's something sinister?" "Mm-hmm. Well, I've got to admit, Mr. Carr, that his visits to the cemetery do look suspicious." No use discouraging the old goof too much, Thompson thought. He had a highly developed news sense, and he could almost smell Carr's potential newsworthiness. "Yes." Carr fingered the handle of his heavy china mug. "The main problem, of course, is what to do about him." "Well, why don't you try putting garlic around your place? They say that keeps them off, like mothballs." Carr was not amused. "He killed my niece," he answered soberly. "Do you think after that I want to fool around with garlic?" "I've got it," Thompson said suddenly. "Why not try silver bullets? They're poison to werewolves and things like that." Carr picked up the check and started toward the cashier. "Thank you," he said. It occurred to Thompson that the interview had been a mistake. When Carr went home that night, he had in his briefcase 3 silver pesos, a pair of calipers, and a file. Besides these items, he was carrying a small alcohol blowtorch and some garlic bulbs. He already had a gun. It took Carr nearly a week to prepare the bullets satisfactorily. He wanted the bullets to fit well enough so that the gun would not blow up in his face. Tuesday night, with the gun and 6 silver bullets in his pocket, he walked toward Sunny Lawn. It was not quite dark as he got to Hamilton's place. He went up to the front door and rang the bell. When Hamilton answered, he told him that he wanted to discuss the securities again. They went into the house. "By the way," Carr said when there was a lag in the talk, "did you stop the leak in your cellar?" "The leak? Why, yes, I did." "I wondered if I could take a look at it. There's some seepage in our cellar, and I'd like to see how you fixed yours." "I'm so sorry, but it wouldn't be convenient just now. You know how basements are, Carr. Mine is in a dreadful mess." "You're quite sure?" Carr said. He drew the gun from his pocket and fired. "You filthy vampire!" He hit Hamilton in the chest 6 times. The bullets went into the plaster behind him with a splintering sound. Hamilton laughed. His body seemed to boil out around the places where he had been hit, frothingly, and then to knit itself around them and grow solid again. "I'm not a vampire, Car," he said. "What a stupid mistake! Do you think I like blood?" He was so close that Carr caught his body stench above the smell of toilet water, and saw, behind the dark glasses, the tiny flames that flickered where his eyes should have been. "Why, I can't stand the stuff. I won't touch meat until it's been thoroughly bled. That was the dripping you heard in my cellar." Hamilton laughed again. He put his hands, his talons, around Carr's throat. "Your instinct was right, but your conclusion was wrong," he said. "I'm not a vampire, Carr. I'm a ghoul.